morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. So welcome to class number one of our 2026 Virtual HOA Academy. We teach the HOA Academy in partnership with the cities of Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, and Tempe. My name is Beth Mulcahy, and I'm the founder and senior partner for the Mulcahy Law Firm in Phoenix, Arizona. Our firm currently represents over 1,000 planned communities and condominium associations throughout the state of Arizona. I also serve and have served on my HOA board for over 14 years. First of all, let's just say Happy New Year to everybody. I wish you and your association a prosperous new year ahead. I can't believe it's been nearly 6 years since our first virtual class, which was started in the pandemic in March of 2020. This virtual platform continues to be a huge success and allows us to reach more people and provide free education more than ever before. So thank you for joining us today for our first class of the 2026 Virtual HOA and Condo Academy series. We understand that serving on an association board can be challenging. I know that firsthand. I can honestly say that at least once a month, I think to myself, how much longer am I going to be on my HOA board? Because at times it does drive me nuts. But other times it's been a really rewarding thing because I get to see a lot of positive changes in my association and I feel like I'm making a big impact. But as you're serving on your board, we know it can be challenging and there's uncertainty sometimes because you don't know the answers, you don't know how to handle things. And sometimes it can just be stressful dealing with difficult people or some of the problems, in addition to all your other life responsibilities. That's why we created these classes to be here to support your board with free seminars, including a dedicated Q&A session anytime we're teaching live on our virtual platforms. And I would encourage you to check out our website at mulcahylawfirm.com because we have a great lineup of classes set for the first half of 2026. Additionally, I wanted to mention something about many of our participating cities' neighborhood and community engagement offices offer valuable information and resources, including neighborhood grants to assist voluntary neighborhood associations and HOAs with enhancement and beautification projects and various community building endeavors that they support. We encourage you to reach out and connect with your city's neighborhoods or community engagement teams in the new year to inquire about their specific offerings. You also can check out the websites, a great way to find information about the neighborhood and community engagement offices for your particular city, town, or municipality is just Google the association's name, like Tempe, and community engagement and HOAs, or HOAs and condos in the city of Tempe. And you should be able to get a link. If you are unable to find a link, you can always contact my office at info@mulcahylawfirm.com, and we'll be sure to give you that information. There's a wealth of resources available in all of these participating cities' web pages, and there's classes that are being taught in addition to these virtual classes, and just a lot of resources. So we would really encourage you to reach out and start looking into those things, especially the grants. Most cities, towns, and municipalities, their fiscal year ends at the end of June. And so there's a new reset on the grant money starting July 1st. And that's a great opportunity to be first in line to have a city go money that's available, and it's a resource for associations. So I would encourage you to please look into that. Okay, what are we going to be talking about today? The session today, we're going to be talking about the most pressing trends and opportunities facing HOAs and condos in 2026. We're going to be covering the rise of AI-powered platforms, cybersecurity threats, impacts of management company mergers, insurance challenges facing associations, and new advances in electronic voting, security cameras. Then we're going to dive deep into tech and industry shifts, reshaping associations. We'll also be talking a little bit about water conservation efforts in Arizona and sustainability measures. And more important, practical than ever, we're going to wrap up with how to set goals for your association in 2026 so you get things done. So I can see my team that supports me in these classes would like to give, a big shout out to Alexis and Holly for all they're doing to help us get these classes done today and throughout 2026. They've already put the poll on the screen. And we always have 2 questions to start out each presentation, which helps me tailor the class to who's attending today. So if you wouldn't mind answering, if you're on Zoom, please, just go ahead and answer the poll right there. If you're on Facebook Live joining us, there's 2 questions that we need for you to answer. The first one is, in which city does your HOA or condominium is it located? And then the second one is, let us know what your current role is with the association. Are you on the board? Are you a homeowner? Are you a manager? If you wouldn't mind filling out those poll results, we'll circle back to them after we talk a little bit about some introductory remarks about the new legislation that has been introduced already in the 2026 legislative session. Before we get started on that, though, I just want to mention that we have an amazing number of people. It looks like as of right now, we have about 112 viewers on Zoom, and we also have a number joining us on Facebook Live. So wonderful turnout today for the first class of 2026. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Arizona legislature. They are in session right now. They opened the 57th legislature on Monday, January 12th, so last week. Just like prior years, we anticipate that there are going to be many different HOA and condo bills introduced during this legislative session in 2026. As of Monday, January 19th, there were 17 bills that had already been introduced regarding HOAs and condominiums. And we're just going to do just kind of a brief overview. Now, remember, the legislature is likely going to be in session probably till June of 2026. And we're going to see a number of shifts on these bills. We're going to see more bills introduced. We're going to see some bills that are introduced that just stall and don't go anywhere. But please be, comforted in knowing that in each class we'll be talking a little bit about the bills. And as we get closer to like April, May, and June, we're going to be talking about the bills that actually passed this session and that we know for sure will be impacting associations in Arizona. So a couple bills, just kind of fun, interesting ones I'm just going to talk about that have been introduced. I'm not going to go through all 17, but just some kind of fun ones that I think you might be interested in. One is on address lights, and it says that no matter what your association documents say, associations cannot prohibit installation or use of lighted home address devices, which is kind of an interesting bill. To the best of my knowledge, I think that's the first time that one was introduced ever. Then there's some technical corrections to the open meeting law, basically that gives us the ability to have, virtual open meetings, which I'm surprised this hasn't been introduced, sooner. Obviously, previously the statute talked about being able to appear by a conference call as long as everybody could hear everybody, but it looks like now they're getting more specific in terms of Zoom meetings or Teams meetings to have your board meeting, and that they're required to be open board meetings. We also have made some changes to flags that can be, flown on an owner's property, and they're adding it for uniformed services, the United States division flag. And so they're expanding the flags with that. Some other things that they talk about, dissolution of associations or some things, some drought lawns and drought bills. One that's kind of notable because this will come into play next fall is an association may not require overseeding or watering lawns during a drought year as defined by Arizona revised statutes. So again, that's a green bill that we'll be watching carefully. Another one that's kind of interesting is on lobbying and political activity. And it says that an association may not spend association monies on any organization that engages in lobbying or that attempts to influence the outcome of an election. I think I'm not in favor really of, associations like directly lobbying on things. I mean, obviously individuals can, their board members or homeowners can contribute to their legislators by saying whether they're in favor or against a bill, or, association can, submit something with names of everybody in the community. I think that CAI, which is a national organization, think tank that helps associations, this arguably might be, against not being able to contribute money to their lobbying efforts. So I think that there's going to be a big pushback on that in our industry, this particular bill. So I probably don't see this going anywhere this year. And really, there's another one on shade structures, and that we may not prohibit the backyard installation or use of a shade structure that's going to apply to planned communities only. And so that's really just kind of a quick little overview of, okay, these are the bills right now that are impacting associations. And we will continue to monitor those bills throughout the legislative session. Like I said, it's going to be a long session, usually about 5.5 more months or 5 more months, where these bills will be analyzed and discussed in committee meetings and passed between the House and the Senate in Arizona. And we will be your primary resource about information on the bills. And starting next week, we will be having a summary on the homepage of our webpage, which defines the bills and at what stage they are in the process. And then, of course, at each class going forward, we will be talking about which bills we're watching and which bills are moving forward this legislative session. Okay, let's go back and look at what the poll is for today. So the first poll question was, in which city do you reside, or which city is your association located in? Every single city that partners with us to teach these classes has representation today, which is amazing. So Avondale, 2%, Chandler, 6%, Glendale, 4%, Goodyear, 2%, Mesa, 26%, Peoria, 5%, Phoenix, 15%, Scottsdale, 26%, Surprise, 7%, and Tempe, 7%. So really great turnout today, especially good turnouts from Mesa and Scottsdale, which are co-tying at 26% for the session today. So great to have such a wide variety of the Valley here today listening in. Our next question was, let us know your current role. And we have 64% that are board members, 7% that are managers, and 23% that are interested homeowners, with 7% being in the other category. So welcome, everybody. It looks like we have kind of a board member heavy representation today, but also we have the other categories, with a little smaller representation. So welcome, everybody, for being here today. Okay, let's talk about hot topics for 2026. I always love teaching the first class of the year for the virtual neighborhood HOA Academy, because it's always kind of fun to think about what are the issues going to be in 2026 and how can we best advise our clients and our friends and those in the industry about what we should be thinking about for 2026. And kind of the first one that I think is on everybody's mind right now is the role of artificial intelligence, AI, and how it's going to impact our, communities, how we can create efficiencies through AI for our associations. And so I want to start out with that topic for 2026. We have a great cheat sheet that we have created on how artificial intelligence can help Arizona condominium and planned community boards and management companies. And so I hope that you will take a look at that. It's a brand new cheat sheet that we just created recently. So let's talk a little bit about, okay, what are some main things that AI can do to help associations? So we've seen firsthand that AI tools can improve the efficiency, transparency, and effectiveness of board meetings and just overall management of the association. And we're going to go through some specific things as we go through the presentation today. So artificial intelligence, for those of you who may not be as familiar with it, refers to systems that can learn by recognizing patterns and interact with humans using natural language. So many of you may know ChatGPT or Perplexity. And what you basically do is you go to that website and you ask a question, or maybe you download something and it listens to whatever you're downloading and analyzes it and then spits back a response. AI technologies enable computers to see and hear, understand, transcribe, and translate languages, quickly find and summarize information from multiple sources, and analyze data and make recommendations. While AI capabilities continue to evolve, there are some questions about the appropriate use for associations. But we need to remind everybody that AI is imperfect. So when you're using AI, you definitely need to, read response, question it, analyze it, do your own independent investigation and due diligence before you just rely on it as, the law, because it's imperfect. But there are a lot of things that can be used to help associations. We're going to kind of go through some practical uses right now. So how we're seeing management companies or boards using AI would be, it effectively can transcribe and summarize meetings. So AI can transcribe every word that's being said right now in board meetings in real time. Also, there's a great feature on Zoom that also allows you to transcribe. As you're having your classes, it's in the settings. And so accurate summaries and draft minutes can be generated immediately after the meetings, which is helpful to prepare the meeting minutes. This can reduce manual work and supports having precise record keeping, and helps you get the minutes done a lot faster. Now, one thing I want to mention on the using transcription for the minutes, it's too much information. So you definitely need to, include in the minutes only the things that were decided, not every word that's said. So you're going to be significantly cutting, the AI transcription to make the final set of the meeting minutes. And honestly, what you could do too is ask AI to summarize it for you with only the decisions that were made. And it can do that for you to, sift through the material and create a shorter set of summaries of the meeting. Also can help you with scheduling and meeting notifications if you use AI. AI platforms can automate meeting scheduling, invitations, and reminders. And this will help ensure that board members and residents are informed and all meetings are well attended. So, having those automatic AI reminders in your system is helpful for associations, and it, takes away the need to go in and actually do it every month. There's an important legal note, though, in Arizona that we want to mention. AI-generated notes from virtual meetings can be considered open association records. So, any transcription that you may have in the books and records of the association would need to be provided if an owner requests them, if it is kept as part of your records for the association. And AI note-taking should be disclosed to owners if requested, meaning if they make a records request pursuant to the Condo Act and the Planned Communities Act. Another use of AI in HOAs and condos is it helps streamline administrative tasks. So document management, AI can organize, file, and retrieve meeting records, financial reports, homeowner requests. It also improves accessibility and reduces the administrative workload. Now, last week I attended the CAI National Law Seminar, which was, all the lawyers in the entire United States came to San Diego last week, and we had a seminar for all the lawyers, and there were about 800 lawyers there. And I attended 2 or 3 different AI classes for HOAs and condominium attorneys. And one of the things that I thought was really fascinating is that if they were talking about how we can use different AI technologies to help with association books and records. And so task automation and organizing files and retrieving them were very hot topics. So how a lot of the how the speakers were telling us that they were using it is if the association's records are downloaded into the cloud, you can ask AI to look at the cloud and to pull out things for you, like if an owner's asking for a records request, or if the manager wants to find out which meeting minutes the board adopted the policy on, the pool hours, or which meeting the board voted to adopt a fine policy, etc. And so it's really an effective tool if you have all of your documents for your association downloaded onto the cloud, and then you're able to have your AI system, access the cloud to help you organize, file, and retrieve certain documents. It also helps with task automation, another administrative task that AI can help with. So it can help with invoice processing, work order management, and to record updates that might be happening for your association. Also, we're seeing AI being used to enhance communication and resident engagement in your association. So AI can provide 24/7 resident support. So if you have an AI-powered chat box on your association's website or on your management company's website, it can respond to owner questions, handle service requests or complaints, and provide information on rules, policies, amenities, architectural review forms, etc. And having this type of 24/7 resident support will improve responsiveness and resident satisfaction for your association. And so if you have kind of an outdated website right now, you may want to be thinking about updating your website to include some of these features to, make things easier for your residents to find out information, and to minimize the time that's spent by your manager or your board members responding to general inquiries that could easily be found or responded to by AI on your website. Also, AI can help with automated alerts in emergency situations. AI can send immediate alerts, coordinate responses, and provide real-time update to residents in the event of an emergency in your communities. Also, AI can help you facilitate data-driven decision-making. It can analyze data from resident complaints or feedback, maintenance requests, and amenity usage. You can compare, your water bills, and it can provide you with, interpretation. It can provide you with interpretation regarding reserve studies. I mean, really, the analysis by AI that can be used if you're downloading these different things into it, and having it analyzed for you, can really help you make much better decisions for your community going forward on your budget, on how you, are managing different assets of the association. And this will help you identify trends and recommend improvements so that your association can run better and be more fiscally sound. AI can also help you identify problems earlier. Maybe it can proactively red flag or let you know that, hey, we've got ongoing maintenance problems on this particular issue at the association, or a common resident complaint or concern that we're seeing again and again and again. It means that it probably hasn't been fixed, and we need to address that. And this, using AI in all of these different ways, can help boards address issues before they escalate, which helps with your owner satisfaction and honestly limits your board members' stress for their time serving on the board. Also, using AI can help simplify vendor and financial management. It can help you with vendor selection. If you put in your ask AI for recommended vendors based upon defined criteria, and it may streamline the process of identifying qualified service providers. Like you could say, tell me about the reviews for this pool company. Are there positive reviews? Are there negative reviews? Etc. AI can help with financial automation, which is accounts payable and receivables, budget preparation, and financial forecasting for your association. And it can improve your accuracy and reduce manual errors. Also can help with vendor oversight. So AI can automatically send reminders for key vendor-related deadlines like your insurance renewals, contract expirations, and warranty expirations for your association. It can also enable predictive maintenance. It can monitor building systems and infrastructure in your community and predict when maintenance or reserve items may need attention, and will help you prevent costly emergency repairs and extend the life of your community assets. And like I said a little bit earlier in this presentation, Zoom has an AI companion. So if you're having your meetings on Zoom, Zoom has integrated an AI companion feature to enhance virtual meetings, productivity, and digital collaboration. And it's designed to support more efficient and organized online meetings. And so definitely, you need to be looking into what, if you're using Zoom or using Teams or another virtual platform to have your meetings, there are probably a lot of new features that you may not even be aware of, that if you just do a little bit of research, that you might be able to integrate into using in your meetings in 2026. Okay, that was a lot to digest on AI. And I can tell you that after sitting through several classes last week about how AI is impacting the legal industry and the HOA industry, I can tell you that this is something that is, it's kind of like back when I first started my practice in like 1996, really email and, having the World Wide Web was just kind of happening. And it really changed how we did business back in 1996. Well, fast forward now to 2026, and AI is something that is here to stay. And I think the way that we all need to approach it is that it's going to help us. It's a tool to help us be more efficient. It's a tool to minimize stress for board members. And it's a tool to, help us run communities better. And we should embrace it. Because it's definitely here to stay, and it can create efficiencies that will definitely help associations moving forward. Okay, let's talk a little bit about electronic voting, which is kind of another emerging area that I see in 2026. We have a great blog that we wrote on electronic voting that we'll be sharing with you. That gives kind of more of a deep dive. But just be aware that under Arizona law, a written ballot may be delivered via an online voting system, so long as the online voting system authenticates the member's identity, authenticates the validity of each electronic vote to ensure that the vote is not altered in transit, and 3, transmits a receipt to each member who casts the vote electronically, and 4, stores electronic votes for recount, inspection, and review purposes. So kind of a new trend that we're seeing. Maybe 15-20% of our associations are now using electronic voting companies to help them, with their elections, or to help them with major votes in their community, like special assessments, amending CCNRs, et cetera. And it's definitely something that's a trend for the future. If you're a smaller association, you may not want to spend the money to have a third-party contractor come in to do voting for your association. But many larger associations with like 100 or more lots or units, they are definitely embracing the online voting trend. Like I said, under Arizona law, as long as those 4 categories of information are met, you are perfectly fine to use electronic voting for your meetings. And there are several companies in Arizona that now provide safe, secure, and accurate online voting services, specifically to help HOAs and condominiums with their voting needs electronically. Online voting can reduce costs associated with the ongoing voting process, because what we found is that the turnout is significantly higher. So you're not likely going to have to have a second meeting to try to vote on an issue or try to get a quorum. And people are embracing it in our experience. So if you haven't tried it and you are an association that might consider doing it for your annual meeting or a large vote that you may have coming up, and you need the names of some companies that do electronic voting, please reach out to our firm, and we'll provide you with several names to help you through this process. A couple things to note on electronic voting. If you're switching from voting the way that you normally do it, like by U.S. mail, what you want to do is start early, and you're going to have a little bit of an education process. You want to give maybe a little bit more time than you normally would give for the electronic voting. And remember, under Arizona law, we have to provide notice of the meeting, not less than 10, not more than 50 days in advance of the meeting. So there's kind of like a sweet spot of 40 days. So I would definitely time the notice and the information about electronic voting, in that, 45 days before the meeting range, if you can, so that we can get plenty of time. The great thing about electronic voting is they automatically send reminders if you haven't voted. So I think that really helps with the participation and getting people to vote. Remember, if you have people that don't want to vote electronically, you can have, the way I suggest that you have this handled is that you state in the notice that if they don't wish to vote electronically, that how they can get a ballot, whether, we send it to them or whether they come to the association's office or the management company's office to get a ballot, or we email it to them. There has to be some alternative means if an owner doesn't want to participate electronically. Also, don't forget that under Arizona law, we also have to allow an owner to vote in person at the meeting if a meeting is required for a vote. So let's say, for example, we're having an annual meeting. We send out the electronic voting. We give an option for people if they don't want to electronically vote on how they can get the ballot. And then we also need to allow the owners to vote in person at that meeting if, they choose to do so. So one thing that I'm kind of seeing with the electronic voting boards are forgetting that, hey, we also have to allow people to vote in person at the meeting if they haven't already voted. So just keep that in your back pocket. State law does require that. Okay, let's see. Security cameras is another hot topic for 2026. We have a great cheat sheet that we put out at the end of 2025 on this topic. Security cameras are becoming more widespread and common in associations because they're less expensive to put in maybe than they were in the past. And they do offer meaningful benefits for associations, particularly in deferring criminal activity, assisting with incident resolution. Just this morning, I was on a Zoom call for a hearing for an owner that brought glass into the pool area of an association. And we had the security camera footage that replayed the entire incident where they bottle of wine fell out of the person's backpack and shattered all over the pool deck. And it was really hard for that owner to refute that they didn't violate, the written rules of the association, which were no glass in the pool area. So it helps us with incident resolution, determining who damages something, determining rule violations, etc. It also demonstrates a commitment to resident safety. I mean, we don't want to, overstate what cameras can do for an association because they are not a cure-all. But they do play an important role in proactive risk management, and properly implemented, they can help associations meet their legal obligations to keep the common areas safe for residents and guests. Associations may want to install surveillance cameras in common areas for safety and security reasons. We do recommend that you consult as an association with a security professional to help you discuss crime trends before you put the cameras up. Review what might be some new techniques that are emerging for the cameras, and evaluate the specific needs and the best locations for the cameras in your community. You want to make sure that if you are, putting up cameras, that you clearly post notices in the areas where the recording devices are in use. Do not misrepresent the quality or level of the service being provided. Like, you don't want to say 24-hour surveillance, by a live person, because that's very unlikely that you have that. You want to encourage residents to take additional steps to protect themselves in addition to the cameras. And you can do that through, communications or talking about this at board meetings if there are issues that come up in your association. Some key considerations for boards that are using security cameras. You need to change the video tapes or the digital recordings frequently, if applicable, or potentially on a daily basis. Retain the recordings for at least a week. Some associations keep them for up to 30 days. Do not represent the effectiveness or the scope of the security measures that you have with the cameras. Review applicable state laws and any local ordinances that there may be in place to understand any required security standards. And don't reduce existing security measures without providing members, an opportunity to provide input. And if security is reduced, be sure that we notify the residents through newsletters, electronic communications, bulletin boards, or association websites. And don't forget, obviously, that to limit our liability for associations, we want to maintain adequate insurance coverage for the association's common areas. There are some homeowner rights that I want to talk about, with regard to cameras and individual security devices. Well, first things first, remember that associations cannot point an association cameras in such a way that it is, recording an owner's property. So you want to be really careful that it's, not the cameras for the association are not recording individual owners' property and what's happening at individual owners' property. Also, obviously, no security cameras in bathrooms or any area where there would be an expectation of privacy for an owner. We're seeing more and more like Ring cameras on associations. And many homeowners are now asking for this. It's not as big of a deal, I would say, in planned communities, but in condos, it can be more of a kind of a dicey issue because we get sometimes complaints by the neighboring owners that, hey, the Ring camera is monitoring everything that's happening at my front door based upon its placement. We have to balance the different needs of each homeowner when that situation arises. I think a good policy for an association is that individual cameras, like a Ring camera on an owner's property, should not capture footage of an adjacent owner's property or the association's common areas. And there's typically how we've resolved these issues when these issues have come up with clients of ours is placement of the Ring camera in such a way that it only is recording what's happening right in front of your door. And typically the way to do that is to have the camera at the doors right here. The camera is facing this way and not out towards the other units. What are some frequently asked questions? So who can access the surveillance footage for HOA common area, any sort of video that we may have from that? Access should be limited. So the ability to access 24/7, 365, it really should be limited to property management would be my first choice, board members, security personnel, and law enforcement. Associations should also adopt clear policies governing access and use. So how long you're going to keep the records. And, it is a book and record, in my opinion. So if you retain the record, an owner should be able to, review it if they request, and we still have it as a record. Now we're going to have to weigh that with, if it contains something personal information or something like that, we may have to weigh that and they may not be able to see it. But again, adopting a clear policy about how these records are going to be used is really beneficial for your association. So when you get into a situation where somebody's requesting it or, somebody's asking for it 60 days after it's already been deleted, we can show them the retention policy and, hopefully that will answer their questions as to why the recording wasn't kept after a certain date. So a very common question that I get about surveillance cameras is, should we post signage on the common areas? So yes, definitely I would recommend that. Clear, visible signage supports transparency, legal compliance, and helps reduce potential liability in terms of, this is, we can help you with the signage language if you're in the process of putting up cameras and you want some help with, how to legally address that issue. Again, cameras should never be aimed at private residences. If the association's putting them up, bathrooms, locker rooms, or changing areas, or any area where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy. Next topic that we're going to be talking about, hot trends, is cybersecurity. And we have a great article that we're going to be sharing with you it's a CAI, Community Associations Institute resource called, Is Your Community Association Cyber Safe? And so I think we all can agree that we're becoming more and more, relying on technology to support the daily operations and communicate with residents and manage our fiscal responsibilities for our associations. And obviously all of these different, technology advances are helping us be more efficient and run our associations more efficiently. However, because things are, evolving so rapidly, there are some threats to safety and security when you're using technology in an association. And so recognizing the importance of a basic cybersecurity practice is an important first step in protecting your association from emerging threats. And honestly, we see different threats all the time. A trend that I've been seeing recently with associations is check washing. And I don't know if you have heard about this or if you've seen it for associations. Particular one, my association had this happen to us. We paid a vendor, and actually it happened with two vendors. We paid two vendors, and we sent the check like we always do to the vendor, to their address. And when the check was cashed, the payee or the name of the vendor had been washed. And instead, what happened is they put in a different payee, and that payee cashed the check. And, we didn't find out about it until the bank statement came, and, it showed that, so-and-so had cashed the check. So we immediately went to the bank and opened a fraud claim on that. And unfortunately, the bank said there's nothing we can do. And we ultimately had, because it was a large check, we ultimately had to make a claim on our insurance policy, our fidelity bond for the association, and the insurance company did pick it up and paid the check. So what are some things that you can implement so that if that does occur, how can your association protect itself? A couple things, there are some checks now that can be purchased that make it difficult to check wash, and you may want to consider doing that. Purchasing that type of checks to pay your bills for your association. Try to do online bill payment as much as possible with checks and balances so that your board's overseeing it. Because I know there's always a worry when you make online payments that, hey, the board's not actually signing something, but there are some protocols you can place on how those payments are made. You can okay it as a board. When the bills come in several times a month, you could send an email having the board okay it, or the treasurer okay it before it's paid electronically. Also, banks are offering a system called Positive Pay, which allows, for you to, your manager or your board member that's handling the writing of the checks, to provide a list to the bank of checks that are over a certain dollar amount. Like I think my association, we implemented this, and you do pay for this service, but it's well worth it, in my opinion. And how it works is that any check that's over a certain designated amount, I think we picked $500. Anytime we write a check, it's inserted into the Positive Pay system, and the payee's name is listed in the Positive Pay system. And so when the check is presented to the bank will cross-check to make sure anything over $500 that it's the correct payee is listed. And the person that signs the back of it is actually, in fact, the payee. And so that way, if it's check washed, what will happen is the bank will reject the check and they won't be paid. So check washing, kind of a new trend, unfortunately, that you need to keep your eye on. Hopefully it doesn't happen to your association, but I think I've given you some good, steps to think about if you're seeing that as a trend for your association. On that same line, I hate to talk about online, payment platforms as being something you got to be careful of, but, you do. And online payment processing, you just want to make sure that you have in place security controls and multi-factor authentication before you would ever be making payments to an online payment platform. Sometimes hackers are sending fake association emails that, may direct owners to fraudulent payment portals. So if that's happening to your association, you need to get the communication out right away once you hear about it from an owner. This is something that's occurring. I mean, I even know for my law firm, I receive at least a couple times a month fraudulent emails from people claiming to be my employees, and they have my employees' names, telling me to set up a new way to pay them, instead of the bank account that I do direct deposit on. So just being vigilant and recognizing that there are scams out there. As soon as we, find out about something, we need to be proactive as an association, whether it's notifying our owners, if it's something that's being sent to the owners, or if it's something that is, being sent to the association, carefully reviewing everything to make sure that it is from a vendor, and that is actually something, that we are responsible for, and that we're not paying some third party that's not related to the vendor. Okay, maintenance of management systems. Maintenance platforms can be exploited when access controls are weak. So attackers can, hack into the association's records and delete things, create fake work orders, etc. That's something that the management company is going to need to be vigilant on. Also, communication tools and resident portals. If there are passwords that are weak, that's something that, people can hack into our resident portals and communication portals. If an owner is contacting you, telling you that, hey, we've been hacked and this has happened, we need to address that immediately. Financial and accounting software, problems arise. We definitely need to have strong controls, and be checking that on a regular basis to make sure that, there isn't anything improper happening. And that's going to be a combination of the management company being vigilant and also the association's treasurer. There are just a number of different areas that are really concerning for associations. And I think really just a note to my offices, I think this would be a really good discussion for a cheat sheet for the future, because there are so many different problems that are out there right now in our industry, and we can't reduce the risks, but we have some proactive best practices that we're going to share with you right now that I think will be helpful. I think maybe doing a cheat sheet on this would be a great thing for the first quarter of 2026. So remember how you can reduce risk. Here are some very practical solutions. The association should use strong, unique passwords and multi-factor authentication on all systems. Verify that payment platforms use encryption, fraud monitoring, and secure workflows. Keeping your software and firmware fully updated, encrypting sensitive data in transit and at rest, vetting vendors and clearly defining cybersecurity responsibilities in contracts, conducting regular cybersecurity audits and testing. You typically will bring in a third party to do that for your association. Think of it as like a checkup each year. And training board members, staff, and residents on how to recognize phishing and scams, so that they don't click and blame the association if there's a scammer, somehow hacks into our system and sends out a scam to your residents. You want to act promptly and then warn them if you see something like that happening in your association. So just in closing remarks on the cybersecurity issue, it is complex. It's changing and evolving as we speak. But being proactive on cybersecurity is going to reduce your financial loss, your legal exposure, and any reputational damage if, there's a hacking and, it impacts negatively on your association. Just associations need to be vigilant and plan ahead, stay engaged, and continue to stay tuned to presentations like this where we warn you about some different things that are happening in our industry that you need to be aware of. Okay, let's talk a little bit about industry changes. I'm just going to spend a very brief amount of time on this, but something that we're noting, and I think is going to be something that's important for 2026, is really over the past 2 years, we've seen a lot of management company mergers occurring in Arizona. And basically what we're seeing is third-party management companies from maybe outside of the state of Arizona are coming in and purchasing management companies in Arizona. And there's some good parts to that, and there's some bad parts to that. If you're an association that this is occurring in, typically what happens is you just find out at a meeting like, oh, we've been, purchased by ABC Management Company out of Texas or out of California or out of Florida or New York. And one of the first questions I typically get from associations is, can they do that? Like, do we still have to be managed by them? And the short answer on that is yes. Typically in the contract that you have with your management company, it's with the management company, their successors or assigns. And so go back and check your contract and see what the language of your contract is. But likely if the management company is bought, the person that buys them is going to be their successor or their assigned. So now the contract is between you and the new company that purchased your former management company. There are some positive impacts on this. Some of the positive things we're seeing are the larger management companies. They may have, from an operational standpoint, standardized systems and procedures. They may be able to give us more amenities through the management company that maybe we didn't have before, like access to computer portals or more information regarding the association, better websites, better automated responses to owners, like we talked about earlier, like chats or bots that can answer questions. Sometimes it gives expanded service offerings and more specialized departments with the new management company. But boards, what I'm finding kind of on the negative side is boards, they get upset when this happens because, they lose that small hometown feel of the management company that they hired. And now they're kind of a small fish in a very big sea. And so, if you're one of those associations that's, some of the things that we're seeing, some of the problems that we're seeing are, the integration of your association's information into the large conglomerate that purchased sometimes takes a little bit of time. And, phone calls aren't being answered quickly. Maybe the national office, we had a situation recently where the national office of the new management company that purchased, this particular association's management company, they owners were calling and they didn't even know that association was an association that they managed, which obviously is problematic. Sometimes we're seeing staff turnover because the, former employees of the, small mom and pop management company from Arizona now are moving on to greener pastures. So there's changes in point of contract. It may take longer for bills to be paid. It may take longer for financials to be released. The key thing is if you're in this situation, reach out to your legal counsel to discuss what your options are. Second, communicate with the new management company that you're unhappy with any problems that have arisen and that you are expecting immediate, response and addressing the issues. So these are some important things. I think this also would be a great cheat sheet for our firm to create for 2026 because this is a very hot topic right now. I can think of, over the past few years, at least 8 or 9 large management companies which have been bought out by a national management company chain. And the issues that come from that, it's a change. And there are some problems that are associated with that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the next challenge or the next thing that we're seeing trend for 2026. Rising insurance costs for associations. We're getting questions frequently from associations about insurance premiums, increasing when your, annual renewal comes up. Affordability is becoming a big issue, playing with deductibles and making deductibles higher to make the finances of keeping your insurance in place is a very real reality. Some suggestions on insurance. I don't have a deep dive time for, a deep dive on this, but honestly, this is a great cheat sheet topic too. So if you're in a situation where your insurance premium is increased, you usually will find out about this 30 days before the increase is due. You'll find out if you're going to be renewed or not renewed 60 days in advance under Arizona law. The key thing is, as soon as you find out the information, your management company should be telling you pronto if there's, going to be a large premium increase or if you're not going to be renewed. You need to meet with your trusted advisors immediately to discuss this, your management company, your insurance agent, and your attorney, and come up with a plan. Are we going to change deductibles? Are we going to change the amount of insurance coverage we have? Are we going to have to go into a third-party high-risk insurance market because our insurance has been canceled? Having a strategy call to discuss this is very important. And one thing that I would really caution you from doing is waiting until 2 days before the premium is due to start addressing the issue. That's too late. I mean, honestly, you need like 21 to 27 days, before the premium is due to do adequate vetting of different insurance companies, and to come up with a good strategy on this. So, if your association is in the situation where your insurance costs are, rapidly increasing, or your insurance has been canceled, reach out to your trusted advisors, insurance company, management company, attorney, get all three on a conference call, and let's figure out the problem together. The next common trend that we're going to be talking about here for associations is always assessments and delinquencies regarding assessments. It's just something that you need to keep your finger on for associations. In the month of, for the rest of January and all of February, if your association has a collection file that you don't, know how to handle, meaning you've got an owner who's not paying, maybe they're deceased, or maybe they've dropped off the face of the earth, or maybe they just haven't paid or don't want to pay and they never respond to anything. In the last few weeks of January and all of February, if you send that file to our firm with a note asking for just a free 5-minute check on what our recommendations are for that file, all we need is just a ledger with the person's name and address on it. We'll give you a quick response on, okay, this is how we think you should handle this. So, a trend for 2026 is we anticipate that there are going to be an increase in the number of owners that don't pay due to the problems in the economy right now. And so some key pointers that I want to bring up about that are, number one, please, don't let that debt get too high. So once the debt hasn't been paid for 3 months, you really need to have a strategy in place in terms of, what is the management company going to do? If you're self-managed, what is the board are you going to do? And then when is it going to go to the attorney? What we don't like to see is owners that have $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 in debt accumulating. It's harder to collect the money as it gets higher. So reach out to our firm to help you if you are unsure of how to handle a file. Be proactive, address the delinquencies early rather than later so that you do have an opportunity to get paid. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about for trend 2026 is sustainability measures. Now, I don't have a ton of time to go into this, but you should just be aware that there are some smart water conservation strategies for Arizona HOAs and condominiums. I would encourage you to look at your city, town, or municipalities' websites because a lot of them have links on, smart water conservation strategies, and there may be some grants that you might be able to take advantage of. There are some Arizona Department of Water regulations and requirements that are in place right now. Some associations that have a large amount of turf are already needing to take some, measures to reduce the amount of water that they're using. Most of our associations in Arizona aren't at that stage yet. But there are a number of things that can be done. And this, again, would be a great cheat sheet for 2026 to be talking about what are the different things that we can do for, water conservation in Arizona. So I do think that's going to be a hot topic. Stay tuned because we'll probably be getting a cheat sheet out on that in 2026. Okay. Another practical green kind of sustainability thing that I want to talk about is, one more thing on the water. Conservation, kind of related to that, is artificial turf. Just remember that there is a law in Arizona that talks about artificial turf and that associations cannot prohibit an owner from installing artificial turf. There are certain requirements that, they have to be met, like it has to be on their property and it has to be an area that the owner maintains. And then they have to maintain the artificial turf so that it looks nice, etc. But just be aware of that. That's something that's out there that that if you get an architectural request form for that, just remember this discussion here today and maybe look into it. If you're planning on denying it, make sure that you talk to your attorney and your management company before you would do that. Okay, another kind of important sustainability topic is solar panels and solar energy devices. Don't forget that there are 2 laws in Arizona that talk about, solar energy devices. Associations cannot effectively prohibit the use of solar energy devices in an association on that owner's property. So be really careful if an association is planning on denying Solar energy device, owners do have to get approval through the architectural committee before they install it. And if the board's going to deny it, you definitely need to talk to your attorney before you do that, because for all practical reasons, it's very difficult to deny it. And these cases can be very expensive if the homeowner challenges it. So, be real careful, because associations cannot effectively prohibit solar energy devices right now in a planned community. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, and we have a cheat sheet on solar energy devices, which I believe my office has shared with you on Zoom and Facebook Live. So just recognize that's a resource if you ever have this issue happening in your association. Okay, last but not least is setting goals for your association. So kind of our last topic before we get into questions today is, I think it's a good idea for every association to have goals for 2026. If you don't have goals, what you end up doing as an association is you just get caught up in the minutia of running the association, dealing with difficult owners, handling complaints, dealing with the violations, and you never get any of those big, juicy, big picture goals for your association. So what I recommend is we have a cheat sheet called the Eisenhower Method to accomplish goals. And we use this for my association. And actually, this is a great life tool as well. And so basically, you just write down what are all your pressing concerns for your association right now. And then this cheat sheet shows you how to grade them as urgent, important, not urgent, not important. And then you determine what are your top 5 goals based upon what is urgent and also important for your association. And so like for my association, one of our goals is we're doing a large capital improvement project to improve our common areas. So number 1 goal is going to be to get the common area, project done. It's been a project 3 years in the making, but this is our year to actually start and finish it. Always a goal for our association is making sure that we're keeping our reserve fund, making contributions to our reserve fund as best we can to comply with the reserve study for our association. Maybe a goal for this year is to update our association's documents, tackle the delinquencies. You have to look at what are the problems, list all of them, and then grade them based upon what's urgent and important. And I think kind of a good plan is just come up with 5. Okay, there's going to be, probably 1 or 2 big ones like the capital improvement project, and then the rest are going to be smaller ones that we for sure are able to accomplish in 2026. So I encourage every association to come up with goals, use the Eisenhower Method cheat sheet to help you accomplish those goals this year, and then check in on them every month. Make sure that your manager or your person who's creating your agenda, the last item on every meeting, agenda should be check in on our goals for our association in 2026. So you keep them front and center. You're discussing them every month and moving forward to accomplish them in 2026. Okay, we covered a lot of territory here in an hour and 4 minutes in terms of what are the pressing topics in 2026. Remember to reach out to your trusted advisors when difficulties arise in 2026. One of the things that our firm does that I think is really helpful for associations is we practice preventative legal. And what that means is we encourage our clients to address problems early in the process. Don't wait and let it fester where it becomes a huge problem and now it's going to cost a ton of money to fix. It'd be better to talk about it with your legal counsel early in the process to prevent the problem or to determine a strategy to, resolve the problem quickly. One thing that we do as a firm is that every single day, a business day, that the courts are open, we get a summary of all the lawsuits that are filed in Arizona that day. At the end of the day, they send it out at about 5:05 p.m. every day. And I have one person in my office that all they do is give me a listing of every case filed against an HOA or condo in Arizona every day. And I want you to hear it from me that my goal is to not have any of my clients on that list. I do not want my clients being sued. And what I can tell you is, and my team member that handles this for me, Cled, very rarely, like a handful of times a year. And remember, we have 1,000+ clients. Will I see one of the clients that we are the attorney for sued in a fiscal year? And I see every day, just so you know what's going on out there, is every day there's 2 or 3 new lawsuits being filed against associations. So what we're suggesting works, okay? Being preventative, proactive on the front end of a problem versus waiting until it festers and it becomes, this huge World War III type of thing. So I really encourage you, if you're listening to this seminar today, be proactive and practice preventative legal. It's going to save your association a lot of money. It's going to save your association a lot of headaches, and it's going to make your association run more efficiently and get things done in 2026. We have a couple teaching opportunities coming up in the next few weeks that I want to make sure you're aware of. We're teaching class at Scottsdale Neighborhood College on January 29th, 2026. So next week from 1 to 3 p.m. at Mustang Library. It's in person. I will be teaching the class. So I hope that you will join us. If you want more information on the class or you want to register, you can go to our website at mulcahylawfirm.com. Also, our next First Fridays is going to be the first Friday in February, Friday, February 6th, 2026. At 9 a.m., we hop on Zoom and Facebook Live and answer questions that all of you have regarding your HOAs or condos. You can find out more information on that, submit a question on our website as well at mulcahylawfirm.com. And also all of our seminars that we are going to be teaching in January, February, March, April, May, and June are all listed on our website now. So you can take a look at the topics. We put a lot of thought into topics as to how we can best help associations and owners and managers and board members do your jobs so that it's very stress-free and, doesn't take a huge amount of your time. We put a lot of thought into the classes on what topics would be most beneficial to all of you. So I hope you will check that out and join us for future classes. I wish every association all the best in 2026. If you have any questions throughout this year, please always consider contacting our firm. We're happy to help you solve your legal problems, strategize with you, practice preventative legal, so that you have very few hassles on your time serving as a board member or as an owner in your association. So take care, everybody. Have a great 2026.